A murder so brutal, it left even seasoned investigators stunned. Drugged, stabbed, and chopped into pieces, Saurabh Rajput's body was hidden in a drum sealed with cement.
The autopsy report disclosed that Saurabh's head was severed and his hands were cut off at the wrists, suggesting an attempt to fit his dismembered body inside a drum.
Saurabh Rajput was a man of dreams and determination, born and raised in Meerut, India. He worked tirelessly to build a career that not only brought him financial stability, but also immense respect. As a merchant Navy officer, he traveled across the world, exploring new places and experiences, but his heart always belonged to one person, Muskaan Rastogi. Their love story wasn't easy. When Saurabh and Muskaan decided to marry in 2016, they faced strong opposition from both their families. Yet, their love remained unshaken. Against all odds, they tied the knot, believing that their love would conquer all obstacles. They settled in Meerut, ready to start a new chapter together. Muskaan was an independent, lively woman. She was intelligent, charming, and had a magnetic personality that drew people toward her. Saurabh adored her and ensured that she had a comfortable life while he worked hard at sea. Their love seemed perfect, and their happiness only multiplied when they welcomed a baby girl into their lives. However, life had its own plans. Saurabh's job, while prestigious and well-paying, came with a price: months of separation from his family. The long stretches away from home created an unavoidable distance between him and Muskaan. While he spent months on ships navigating the vast oceans, Muskaan was left behind to manage their home and raise their daughter. At first, they managed late-night video calls, texts filled with love, and small gestures helped them stay connected. Saurabh made every effort to make up for his absence, showering his family with gifts whenever he returned from his voyages. He never missed a chance to express his love, but love alone wasn't enough to fill the void. Muskaan slowly began to feel the weight of loneliness. Taking care of their child alone, managing household responsibilities, and spending nights in an empty bed started to take a toll on her. The once exciting life of being a sailor's wife soon turned into an isolating reality. Their conversations became shorter, the warmth in their relationship faded, and before they knew it, the cracks in their marriage had begun to appear. As tensions with their families continued, Saurabh and Muskaan made a crucial decision. They moved out of their family homes and started living separately in Indiranagar, Meerut. The idea was to build a space for themselves, free from external pressures. For Saurabh, this was a fresh start. He believed that by moving to a new place, they could rekindle their love and strengthen their bond. However, for Muskaan, the move only deepened her isolation. With no immediate family nearby, no emotional support, and Saurabh away for months, she found herself trapped in a life that felt increasingly lonely. Muskaan yearned for companionship, someone to talk to, someone who could be present, someone who would make her feel seen. And soon, she found exactly that. What had started as a love that defied all odds was now on the brink of destruction, and neither Saurabh nor Muskaan could see what was coming next. Muskaan had never imagined herself capable of betrayal. When she married Saurabh, she had been certain that their love would endure the test of time. But as the months stretched into years and the walls of their home became silent witnesses to her growing loneliness, she found herself craving companionship. She missed the warmth of a partner, the thrill of being wanted, the joy of having someone by her side. Then, Sahil Shukla entered her life. Sahil was an old acquaintance from Meerut, someone she had known but never truly been close to. He was charming, free-spirited, and most importantly, he was there, unlike Saurabh, who was always miles away at sea. Their relationship began innocently enough, with casual conversations that soon turned into deeper, more personal confessions. Muskaan felt comfortable with Sahil in a way she hadn't in years. He made her laugh, listened to her frustrations, and filled the void that had been left by Saurabh's absence. What started as friendly chats soon became something more. Muskaan and Sahil's bond deepened with each passing day. Their messages became more frequent, their meetings more intimate. At first, it was just a few stolen moments, Long drives, coffee dates, shared laughter. But soon, the attraction between them became undeniable. The late-night phone calls turned into secret meetings. Their whispers turned into passionate confessions. And before they knew it, they had crossed a line that could never be undone. Muskaan was no longer just a lonely wife. She was a woman in love with another man. While Saurabh sailed across oceans, unaware of what was happening behind his back, Muskaan and Sahil grew inseparable. Their desire to be together knew no bounds. Every time they met, they wanted more. What had started as a reckless escape from loneliness soon turned into an addiction, one that neither of them wanted to give up. But there was a darker side to their affair, one that Muskaan hadn't foreseen. Sahil wasn't just a forbidden lover. He had his own demons. He was deeply involved in drug use, a world far removed from the disciplined and structured life that Saurabh had built for Muskaan. Under Sahil's influence, Muskaan was introduced to narcotics. At first, it was occasional, just something to enhance the thrill of their secret meetings. But soon, she found herself relying on it. Drugs blurred the lines between right and wrong. The guilt that should have consumed her over betraying Saurabh was numbed by intoxication. She felt free, uninhibited, unburdened by the consequences of her actions. Sahil, too, was intoxicated, but not just by the substances. He was consumed by Muskaan. He wanted her entirely, without any restrictions, without any barriers. And Saurabh was the biggest barrier of all. Their relationship became obsessive. Muskaan and Sahil weren't just two lovers sneaking around. They were desperate for a way to be together permanently. And it was Muskaan who planted the seed of a horrifying idea. At first, it started subtly. Muskaan would vent about her frustration, complaining about how Saurabh was the biggest obstacle in her happiness. She spoke about how her life would be different if he weren't around, how she and Sahil could finally be together without hiding. At first, Sahil dismissed it, thinking it was just Muskaan speaking out of anger. But she didn't stop. She kept bringing it up in different ways, slowly convincing Sahil that there was no other solution. She played on his emotions, telling him that if he truly loved her, he would do whatever it took to keep them together. She made him believe that Saurabh's presence was the only thing standing between them and a happy life. "What if he was gone?" she whispered one night. "What if we didn't have to hide anymore?" At first, it sounded like a passing thought, an expression of frustration. But Muskaan was serious. She started framing it as the only way forward, manipulating Sahil into seeing it as their only chance at happiness. The idea turned into discussions. The discussions turned into planning. And soon, a horrifying realization dawned upon them. Muskaan had made up her mind. Saurabh had to die. The affair was no longer just an escape. It had become a murderous conspiracy, one that would soon unfold in the most gruesome way possible. By November 2024, Muskaan had crossed a line from which there was no return. Her affair with Sahil had transformed from a reckless romance into a dangerous obsession, one that now demanded an unthinkable sacrifice, her husband's life. The idea of getting rid of Saurabh had initially been a whisper, a fleeting thought spoken in secrecy. But with each passing day, it became a concrete plan. Muskaan was no longer just dreaming about a future with Sahil. She was preparing to make a reality. Muskaan knew that killing Saurabh wouldn't be easy. He was physically strong, a disciplined officer who wouldn't go down without a fight. If she was going to succeed, she needed a plan, one that ensured he wouldn't see the attack coming. She started by acquiring the weapons. Under the pretense of buying kitchen tools, she went to a local market and purchased 2 knives. When the shopkeeper asked about them, she smiled and casually mentioned that they were for cutting chicken. It was a simple lie, but it was enough to keep suspicion at bay. Next, she needed a way to weaken Saurabh before the attack. Killing him in his full strength was too risky. She began faking anxiety symptoms, frequently visiting a doctor to obtain sedatives. The medication would help her drug him, making it easier to strike when he was vulnerable. But even that wasn't enough. Muskaan needed to think beyond the act itself. What would happen after the murder? Where would she dispose of the body? How could she erase all evidence of her crime? She started gathering information without raising alarms. In conversations with friends, she casually asked about isolated areas, places where things could be buried without being discovered. Each inquiry was carefully framed as innocent curiosity, ensuring no one would suspect her true motives. With the weapons, the sedatives, and a vague disposal plan in place, all she needed now was a perfect moment to strike. On February 24th, 2025, Saurabh Rajput returned home from an assignment in London. He had spent months away, working tirelessly to secure a better future for his family. Now, back in Meerut, he was eager to reunite with Muskaan and their daughter, unaware that his home had become a death trap. For Saurabh, this was a time of joy. He had missed his wife and child, and was looking forward to spending quality time with them. But for Muskaan, this was a moment she had been preparing for, the first step in executing her plan. She welcomed him with open arms, masking her true intentions behind a smile. She had spent weeks planning his murder, going over every step in her mind. And now, the time had come to act. That night, as they sat down for dinner, Muskaan laced his food with sedatives, the very ones she had obtained by faking anxiety symptoms. She had been careful with the dosage. Enough to make him weak and drowsy, but not enough to raise suspicion. With each bite, she watched him closely, her heart pounding in anticipation. Would he notice? Would he sense something was off? But Saurabh, exhausted from his long journey, ate the food without hesitation. Muskaan held her breath. This was it. However, as the minutes passed, the sedatives didn't work as effectively as she had hoped. While Saurabh appeared slightly drowsy, he remained conscious and alert, not nearly as weak as she had planned. Panic surged in Muskaan. This was supposed to be the night. If Saurabh had fallen into a deep sleep, she and Sahil could have moved forward with their plan. But now, everything was uncertain. For a brief moment, she considered trying again immediately, perhaps convincing him to have some more food or offering him a drink. But she knew she couldn't risk suspicion. Instead, she quickly masked her disappointment and acted as if nothing was wrong. She laughed at his jokes, asked about his trip, and pretended to be the loving wife she once was. Saurabh had no idea that the woman smiling at him had just attempted to take his life. That night, Saurabh went to bed, blissfully unaware that he had narrowly escaped death. He closed his eyes, thinking about the beautiful days ahead with his wife and daughter. But Muskaan wasn't giving up. The first attempt may have failed, but she knew there would be another chance. And next time, she would make sure there were no mistakes. The night of March 4th, 2025, was a culmination of months of planning, deception, and a descent into darkness. Muskaan and Sahil had rehearsed this moment in their minds over and over again, but now, standing on the edge of an irreversible act, the reality of what they were about to do was far more terrifying than they had imagined. Saurabh Rajput, a loving father and a dedicated merchant navy officer, had no idea that the woman he had defied his family to marry was about to betray him in the worst possible way. By now, Muskaan knew that drugging Saurabh was the only way to ensure the attack would go as planned. The first attempt had failed, but this time, she and Sahil were prepared to make no mistakes. On the evening of March 4th, Muskaan prepared dinner as usual, making sure nothing seemed unusual. Saurabh, exhausted from his work and unaware of the evil lurking in his home, sat down to eat. He trusted his wife completely, never once suspecting that the very meal prepared by her hands was laced with sedatives. As the night progressed, the drugs began taking effect. Saurabh started feeling drowsy, his vision blurring as his body grew heavier. He struggled to stay awake, but the sedatives were too strong. His limbs weakened, his mind clouded, and before he could process what was happening, he collapsed into unconsciousness. Once Saurabh was completely unconscious, Muskaan signaled Sahil. This was the moment they had been waiting for. The man who stood in the way of their forbidden love was now at their mercy, unable to fight back, unable to defend himself. With knives in hand, they launched their attack. The first stab tore through his flesh, But Saurabh's body didn't respond. He was too deeply drugged to feel the pain, too weak to resist. But Muskaan and Sahil did not stop at one. They stabbed him again, and again, and again. The attack was frenzied, fueled by months of pent-up desire, rage, and desperation. Blood splattered across the room, staining the very walls of the home where they had once shared life as husband and wife. By the time they stopped, Saurabh was gone. His body lay lifeless, his dreams, his love, his sacrifices, all wiped away in a moment of pure brutality. But their crime was far from over. Now came the most gruesome part of their plan. Killing Saurabh was only the first step. They needed to ensure his body was never found. With terrifying precision, they began the unthinkable, dismembering him. Piece by piece, they cut through flesh and bone, reducing Saurabh to approximately 15 separate parts. It was a process that required time, effort, and a complete lack of humanity. They worked methodically, ignoring the horror of their actions. Each severed limb, each lifeless piece of the man Muskaan had once promised to love forever, was stuffed into a large plastic drum. To ensure no foul odor escaped, they filled the drum with cement, trapping the remains inside. It was a calculated move, one that would buy them time, one that would allow them to continue living their lives as if nothing had happened. The drum was then hidden inside their rented flat, locked away as if it were just another piece of household storage. But murder alone wasn't enough. Muskaan and Sahil knew that if Saurabh was reported missing too soon, suspicion would fall on them. They needed the world to believe that Saurabh was still alive. To maintain the illusion, they kept using his mobile phone, responding to messages as if he were still out there, living his normal life. They even made bank transactions, ensuring there was digital proof of his existence. Days passed, then weeks. No one suspected a thing. But secrets, no matter how well hidden, have a way of unraveling. And for Muskaan and Sahil, the walls of deception were about to come crashing down. With Saurabh dead and his body concealed inside a plastic drum, Muskaan and Sahil knew that the hardest part was yet to come. Murder was only the beginning. If they wanted to escape justice and start a new life together, they needed to make the world believe that Saurabh was still alive. So they embarked on a chilling scheme of deception, carefully crafting an illusion to keep suspicions at bay. Muskaan and Sahil took Saurabh's mobile phone and devised a plan to stage his disappearance as if it were voluntary, instead of making him suddenly vanish, which would raise immediate concern. They decided to fabricate a story that he had gone on a vacation. They traveled to Manali, a popular tourist destination, and carried Saurabh's phone with them. From there, they sent text messages to his family and friends, making it seem like he had taken time off to relax in the mountains. To make the deception more convincing, they even posted pictures on his social media accounts. These were not recent pictures of him, but older photos taken from his gallery, carefully selected to make it appear as though he was actively enjoying his time in Manali. Muskaan herself sent messages to Saurabh's family, pretending to be him. In the messages, she reassured them that he was fine and would return home after the holy festival, which was just weeks away. For a brief period, the deception worked. But no matter how carefully Muskaan and Sahil tried to maintain their charade, small details began to unravel their plan. Saurabh's family was not easily fooled. At first, they found it strange that Saurabh had suddenly decided to go on a trip without informing them in advance. He was a responsible man, deeply connected to his loved ones. This kind of behavior was uncharacteristic of him. Then came the biggest red flag. They realized that despite his supposed vacation, they had not heard his voice. Every time they tried to call him, their calls were either ignored or responded to with text messages instead of voice calls. That was unlike Saurabh, who would normally speak to them over the phone, especially while traveling. Their unease grew. Something was off. Desperate for answers, Saurabh's family decided to take action. They filed a missing persons report with the police, demanding an investigation into his sudden disappearance. As the pressure mounted, Muskaan began to crack under the weight of her crime. The walls were closing in on her, and she was running out of ways to keep up the deception. Then she made a critical mistake, one that sealed her fate. She confessed everything to her mother. In a moment of weakness, whether out of guilt, fear, or sheer exhaustion from living a lie, Muskaan broke down and revealed the horrifying truth. Saurabh was not missing. He was not in Manali. He was dead, and she had killed him. Muskaan's mother was horrified beyond belief. She had never imagined that her own daughter was capable of such an atrocity. The thought of Muskaan murdering her husband, whom she had once loved enough to marry against all odds, was unimaginable. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Muskaan's mother made a devastating decision. She could not stay silent. She immediately alerted the police, providing them with crucial information that led investigators straight to Muskaan and Sahil. With this shocking revelation, the police moved swiftly. They launched a full-fledged investigation, gathering evidence, tracking Muskaan and Sahil's movements, and piecing together the events leading up to Saurabh's disappearance. The lies, the deception, the murder, everything was about to come crashing down. Muskaan and Sahil had spent weeks thinking they had outsmarted everyone, but now they were trapped and there was no way out. With Saurabh's family growing increasingly suspicious of Muskaan's mother revealing the horrifying truth, the police wasted no time in launching a full-scale investigation. The disappearance of Saurabh Rajput, once dismissed as a voluntary trip, was now being treated as a possible cold-blooded murder. The net was closing in on Muskaan and Sahil, and their carefully constructed web of lies was beginning to unravel. Once authorities had enough evidence, they arrested Muskaan and Sahil. The interrogation began immediately. At first, both of them attempted to maintain their innocence, fabricating stories and trying to mislead investigators. But under intense questioning and pressure, the weight of their crimes became unbearable. Muskaan broke down first, revealing the grim details of their murderous plot. She admitted that she and Sahil had not only brutally murdered Saurabh, but had also gone extreme lengths to cover it up, dismembering his body and sealing the remains inside a cement-filled drum. When Sahil was interrogated separately, he too confessed, exposing even more shocking details of their relationship and the crime they had committed together. Based on their confessions, the police searched Muskaan's rented flat, the very place where Saurabh had been murdered. What they found was beyond horrifying. Tucked away in a corner of the house was the large plastic drum filled with cement. Investigators, along with forensic experts, carefully broke it open, revealing the dismembered remains of Saurabh Rajput. It was an image that would haunt the authorities and the public for a long time. Saurabh's body had been cut into approximately 15 pieces, a gruesome attempt to destroy evidence and ensure that no one would ever find out what had happened to him. But their plan had failed. Saurabh's remains were sent for forensic examination, and the cause of death was confirmed: multiple stab wounds inflicted with the very knives that Muskaan had purchased in preparation for the murder. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered an even more twisted side of Muskaan's manipulation. In a bizarre turn of events, Muskaan had psychologically controlled Sahil in ways no one could have imagined. She had created a fake Snapchat account, pretending to be Sahil's deceased mother. Through this account, she sent him messages, manipulating him emotionally, making him believe that his late mother's spirit approved of his actions and his relationship with Muskaan. This manipulation strengthened Sahil's obsession with Muskaan, making him more willing to go along with her dangerous plans. The revelation of the psychological mind game shocked investigators and the public alike. It was not just a murder driven by passion. It was a case of deep psychological control, deceit, and cold-blooded calculation. When news of the crime broke, it shook the entire community. People who had known Muskaan and Saurabh could not believe that the woman who had once fought to marry him had now orchestrated his brutal murder. Saurabh's family was devastated. They had suspected something was wrong when they couldn't reach him, but never in their worst nightmares had they imagined that their own daughter-in-law was responsible for his death. The crime dominated headlines, with media outlets covering every shocking detail. Social media was flooded with discussions, outrage, and debates about how love, betrayal, and manipulation had turned into a crime so monstrous. Many people were horrified at how Muskaan and Sahil had not only killed Saurabh, but had gone on a vacation while pretending he was alive, celebrating Holi while his body lay rotting in a cement drum. With overwhelming evidence, Muskaan and Sahil were charged with murder. The legal proceedings began, with both of them facing the harshest possible punishment under the law. The prosecution built a strong case highlighting the premeditated nature of the murder, the purchase of knives, the drugging attempt, and the discussions about disposing of Saurabh's body, the brutal disposal of his remains, showing a complete lack of remorse. The elaborate deception, proving that this was not a crime of impulse but a well-thought-out criminal conspiracy. As the case moved forward, one thing became clear: justice would be served. Saurabh Rajput's tragic end was no longer just a murder case. It had become a chilling tale of love gone wrong, betrayal, manipulation, an evil plan that ultimately collapsed under its own weight. Muskaan and Sahil, who once thought they had secured their future together, now face a lifetime behind bars, if not worse. In the end, justice prevailed, but at a heartbreaking cost.